Hi, everybody. Welcome to DomainSherpa, and thank you for tuning into the podcast with the best domain name and digital asset content in the world. Today's episode is a Sherpa short titled Reversion to the Mean, where I'm joined by Drew, Sofia, and Tony Yan, the Director of Operations at Escrow.com, to look at their Domain Investment Index report for Q4 2025. We dive way into the data, covering the trends around .com and .ai domains and how the numbers in the report reflect those trends. We also talk about what's the right measure for this information, specifically median versus mean, and how to best provide and use the data. We also discuss some of the geographic trends that are highlighted in the report and that Escrow is seeing on the platform. And then we talk about the state of affairs at Escrow and Tony's role in helping the company operate and scale effectively. All that and more is coming up on today's show. And remember, if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can also watch the video version at DomainSherpa.com and on our YouTube channel at ds.tv. You can also listen to the shows on Apple and Spotify and other podcast platforms as well. So please make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button everywhere that you can and help DomainSherpa grow the pie. We also integrate our shows with what was formerly Muse.ai and is now Skiv.com, which provides search functionality for the shows and transcripts as well. And also, big shout out to Unstoppable Domains, the ICANN accredited registrar that gives domainers powerful tools and the lowest pricing in the industry. They've joined the Afternic Fast Transfer Network and offer fully featured landers with LTO, self-brokerage, and just 3% commissions. Talk to them on X or Name Pros to learn more. And also, big shout out to Escrow.com. Here at MediaOptions, we've relied on Escrow.com for years. They've handled some of our biggest deals, including 7- and 8-figure transactions. We use their specialized domain services because they understand domains. As the largest online licensed and audited escrow operator, Escrow.com is fast, secure, and accountable with workflows built specifically for domains. Whether you're buying your first domain or closing million-dollar deals, they protect buyers and sellers around the world from fraud while ensuring smooth transfers. Escrow.com, domain deals done right. And also, big shout out to DNX.com. DNX is the domain intelligence platform featuring all-in-one search results from top marketplaces, including GoDaddy, Cedo, and Atom. DNX is the most advanced way to find and acquire your domain name, so go to DNX.com today. And also, big shout out to our own business, MediaOptions, the #1 domain brokerage in the world. Find out more at MediaOptions.com, where you can also sign up for our newsletter for the best domain opportunities available in the market every week, and also featuring key insights and other helpful information related to branding, naming, and domain investing. So with all that, it's now time to get into this episode of Domain Sherpa, where all roads lead to domains. What's up, Sherpa Network? Thank you for tuning in today. My name is Jonathan Tenenbaum, a.k.a. JT, a.k.a. J-On, a.k.a. Sherpa Winfrey, and I'm the host and producer of Domain Sherpa, where all roads lead to domains. Today's show is a Sherpa Short, where we usually dive into a domain topic, an article, or something and dig into it for a bit. Today, we're going to get into the Escrow.com Q4 2025 Domain Investment Index and see what's going on with the data and all that good stuff. And we've got a special guest to talk to us about that. We've got the link to the report will be in the show notes, so definitely check it out if you haven't seen it yet. And yeah, so with that, let's just get right into it. Over to my left, we got my boy, the one and only Andrew Rosner, aka Morpheus, aka the Dirk Diggler of digital assets, aka Bob Lee Swagger, the sniper, aka Drew. Drew got what I need, aka every Rosner has its thorn. Never gonna give Drew up. Get Rick rolled. The domain Don is in the building. What's going on, man?
All good. All good. I'm excited to dig into the numbers here with escrow.com. I plan on being the let's say the face of the industry, asking the tough
Ooh.
questions about escrow.com and some of its shortcomings, and what our good friend Tony here, who has been a very strong ally and partner for us over at escrow.com and helping us fix problems as they arise, uh, is in a new role. So first off, congratulations to Tony,
Yeah, we're gonna get
Director
to that,
of
man. Come on, we
Operations.
haven't even got to the intro yet for him. You know what I'm saying? So
This is my intro.
all right, fair enough. Go ahead. You want to do
So
his AKAs
anyway,
too?
I'm excited that we have a new Director of Operations at escrow.com, who can help guide us to the promised land, to a fully functional, outstanding third-party escrow service that our domain name industry can rely upon in a trustworthy manner.
All right, I like it.
So I'm
I think it's
excited.
good. Life goals, you know what I'm saying? Good stuff, good
Yeah.
stuff. Let's keep it moving. Around the horn below Drew, we got the one and only Sofia Canala, aka Sofia Vergara, aka the Golden Girl. Rest in peace, Sophia Petrillo, aka So Fly, aka So Deaf, aka So Be It, So Be It. Sophia, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. I'm really good. I'm excited for the show.
Now you're too
Uh,
soft. Now we don't hear you.
oh, fuck you guys, honestly. Is that
Pre-show,
better
we
now?
there you
Yes.
go. There you go. Well,
I
pre-show, we
hate you
said you were
too.
too loud. Now, sorry about that. But
Yeah, you're
well, you're at a
silencing
very
me.
unique place to, on this particular call, or particular show, coming over from escrow.com, you've taken on the
You
role
should
with
be
us.
AKA the bridge.
Bridge.
Ah,
Okay.
AKA the
okay.
bridge.
Well, I used to
And
have that exact title as well. So, Tony, you've got big shoes to fill, I guess. And I'm gonna say that for myself because your bitches wouldn't. But anyways, yeah, I'm good. I've been having a good productive week, exactly for what's to come. So yeah,
all right, well, good
best of
stuff.
luck.
All right, well, last but certainly not least, we got our esteemed special guest on the show, the one and only newly appointed director of operations at escrow.com, the one and only Tony Yan, aka Tony, aka Tony Robbins, aka Tony Montana. Say hello to my little friend, aka Tony Above and Beyond, aka Tony to Infinity and Beyond. What's up, dude? How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey, hey, doing good, doing good. Again, busy week, busy start to the year, but very excited to be here. First podcast, so thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for being here.
Is
And
this your first podcast ever, like of any sort?
Yes, it's my first recorded podcast, believe it or not.
Wow,
oh,
first for everything. Okay.
okay,
Right.
yeah. So all right. Well, we're gonna have you on the hot seat a little bit
You
today.
are you're officially a Sherpa now, man.
Yeah.
There you go.
Welcome.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and obviously we've got to know you over the course of these past year or so, and in an increasingly important role, obviously taking on more and more responsibility at escrow. And like we said, congratulations on the new role and the promotion. So Billy, give him some cheers, give him some congratulations, give him some claps. Let's go. Let's add that in. And welcome, man, and welcome. So Drew, where do you want to start, man? I mean, I think you've kind of got a
It's
bit of
like
an agenda here.
no, I mean, look, it's a bit like if you're in the military and you get a promotion and they're like, you know, here, put the put a little more color on your uniform. By the way, come into this room. We're gonna read you into this new program, and you walk out of there. You're like, you're not smiling anymore. Uh, anyways, uh, no, I think we should get into the escrow numbers. I've got comments and I you know, I want to make it a little spicy because you guys took it upon yourselves to put a little editorial on this report, which is not unwarranted, but I will push back on the narrative of uh
All right, well, let's
of
yeah, no, I think that makes sense, and let's
but
get to it. So
and
let's
then
start with
along
that.
the way we'll get into some other stuff.
Yeah. So, well, all right. So, Tony, let me kick it to you. What are your highlights? So, obviously, everyone can read the report. We see what it says. What are some specific things you want to call out initially, kind of at the open here, that you think are
Yeah,
important or interesting?
absolutely, guys. Thank you. So, one of the first things that really spoke out to me when I took a look at this report is, number one, we broke out the categories quite a bit more than we used to in the previous years. Hopefully some of that is good. Of course, always open to feedback, hearing that from the community out there at large. But in terms of the actual outcomes, in terms of the actual observations, I think the .ai trend is, of course, top and front and center of what we're having to discuss today, right? The explosion of the valuations that we see and the increase in volume, so on and so forth. Of course, love to hear, what Drew thinks about that and kind of what, his thoughts are from the business perspective and the end user perspective, what could potentially lead up to that and what are the trends moving forward. So I think those are primarily some of my biggest call outs. Of course, always open to feedback on how we could lay the numbers out a bit better or a bit clearer.
Yeah. No, well, look, and I think that's a very important thing. You guys obviously, because you do a big chunk of the transactions now, a ton of them are either not reported or, are in different platforms and things or in different, methods. But you guys do have a very unique and important view into the space. So, the more that you guys continually look to, sort of develop and evolve the report, the sharing of this information, I think that, it's always a good thing, right? It's definitely positive steps forward and it's much appreciated. I would agree about the .ai domains. I mean, we've kind of they've been the hot topic of conversation on many a show over the last, year or two. And I think when you look at the data and you see that chart, you definitely see obviously a big spike. Interestingly, how 2023, 2024, were somewhat similar, in at least, in one of the graphs, in the AI containing exact English words is the one that I'm looking at now on page 8. But obviously 2025 was like a big old, like, sort of somewhat of an explosion when you see like it looks like it's well above and beyond what it had been in those prior years. So yeah, I think that absolutely makes sense. And it's what we're seeing even in what's being reported, what we're seeing in some of our own business and things like that. So um Drew, does it change your narrative on .ai domains?
No, I mean, again, I think, look, there's a couple of things. Obviously, it makes great clickbait to run headlines that say, .ai domains are skyrocketing. They've gone up 300%. The truth is they still remain a very small marginal addition to .com. The market is .com and, .ai is still a fingernail. Uh, I think it is super impressive that that trend has continued to run for as long as it has, that prices have achieved the levels that they have. I think that if we were looking at median prices instead of mean prices, you'd see a very different chart. I think that chart is skewed by um, a number of very large, 6 and 7 figure .ai domain sales, where I think, at the median instead of the mean, it's probably something more around 20,000 to $25,000. But there have been a number of, outlier sales, and that in and of itself is news, and that is, proof. I mean, people paying for something sets the price, right? And so those sales are happening. It certainly is a strong market. We are also benefiting from that market, but it's a clickbait sort of narrative, because all you have to do is sort of scroll down a little bit and you can just see like what part of the AI market actually made, what it's 10%, I think.
Something like
Uh,
that.
right. So, look, that's great. That's a lot. It came from, 0 to 10% in 4 years, 5 years. That's huge growth, no question about it. But and again, the only reason I push back is because, we get this every day. JT, how many people, or Sophia, as well, how many people emailed us just in the last 48 hours with a .ai domain name that they want to sell? And then of those, let's just say it was 200 people emailed us saying, I want to sell my .ai domain name. Of those, 3 to 5 are actually like of any value. And
Yeah.
of those, 2 would be domains that we are interested in maybe taking on for brokerage to sell. Maybe even it's 1, right? And so you're talking about 1 to 2% of the people that are trying to contact us to sell a domain that they own and are, seemingly paid a lot of money for, either in an auction or whatever. Um, these people all believe that they're going to sell their domain. They come to us and they say, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. So I was about to say a domain. I'm not going to say it because it's the last guy that emailed me. This is a keyword that everybody knows. You use it. It has to do with telecommunications. It's a hardware word. And it, it has nothing to do with AI. And you put these two together and it doesn't make a good domain name because the left of the dot and the right of the dot, they have to have some kind of connection. Otherwise, it doesn't, it's not something that will ever sell. And so the problem I have with the whole .im market is that you have all these people hyping the market and hyping the market. And what it's doing is it's leading domain investors to go out and register or not even register. It's go into the auctions and pay hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, and even tens of thousands of dollars to buy these just domains, these .ai domains that cost $100 a year, and you're never going to sell it ever. It's never going to sell. And what I always come back to is like, let's just say that there are, and I mean, I think I'm being generous. In a given year, I bet there are 5,000 companies that are qualified, and it's probably, it might even be an order of magnitude less than that. But let's say that in a given year, there are 5,000 companies, and it literally might be 500, but let's just say it's 5,000 companies that are qualified to pay 6 or 7 figures for a domain name. Do you think, I mean, I don't know if the data's in there, Tony, but like how many companies a year do a 6 or 7 figure transaction through escrow? Like just how many 6 or 7 figure transactions? Do you know roughly? Or
So are
Sophia?
you looking for like a number or percentage or something like that? How do you want
No,
to
no, just like a number. Like, do you think that there's more or less than 5,000 transactions a year that are 6 or 7 figures?
less? What
Less,
do you think,
right?
Sophia?
Is it less
My
than
opinion would be less. Yes.
Yeah.
Is it less than 1,000? Probably,
Well,
right?
no, I wouldn't say less than 1,000. I would say that certainly you've got on the seventh. So this is my experience, okay? I don't know what happened last year, but from the previous year before that, I would say that 7-figure transactions were obviously not that many.
Yeah.
Like maybe less than 20,
Okay.
maybe less than 20,
This-
30 a year. I don't know new numbers, Tony.
Yeah.
That would
Let's
be
say
on you.
50.
Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Let's say 50. And then 6-figure transactions, I don't know. Let's call it 1,000. Okay. And you guys are, I don't know,
Well,
60,
it'd be wait, but it'd
70%
be
of
more than that.
high
Yeah.
value aftermarket transactions.
Yeah, but it'd be a little
So
bit more than that because you have to take into consideration that Escrow has a few marketplaces that
Mhm.
do website transactions that still count towards this report, and those are in the 6 figures, even
Okay,
if
yeah,
they're like on
and
the
so but
low
that's
6 figures.
separate, right?
So it,
That's a business that's selling. It's selling on
yes,
other metrics and
I know,
so
but that's still counted towards the report. That's my
yeah,
point.
I'm just trying to sort of directionally get this narrative correct, right? And so my point is simply that like I don't know, I don't think we're being crazy. I think if we said it's 5,000, we're being super generous. And
Mhm.
if we're saying it's 2,000, we're probably directionally correct. 6 and 7-figure domain names that sell per year in the aftermarket. So if it's 2,000, uh, of those, it appears AI is roughly 10% of that market. So let's say there's 200. Even if we said there's 500, I had 200 people in the last 48 hours emailing me that want to sell their piece of shit .ai domain name for 100 grand or more. Several of them think that it's worth 7 figures. And all of that is because people are out there hyping the .ai market. And the reality is there is a very small handful of people. It's funny. We have done 3 7-figure transactions for a .ai domain, and we've done, I don't know,
50?
15,
Oh, I was gonna say
20 6-figure transactions. And over the last 3-4 years. And I probably sold one of the first 6-figure .ai domains ever. I fixed .ai back in like 2022. I sold for 6 figures for 125 grand. And so uh uh my point is that leaves like 20 open slots. No, sorry, 200. If we're saying 2,000, there's 2,006 and 7-figure sales per year. And the AI market, the data says, is 10% of those sales. That leaves 200 total slots for a 6 or 7-figure sale per year. That sounds directionally accurate to me. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 300, but it's not 1,000.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
so that's 200 open slots to sell a 6 or 7-figure .ai domain name per year. And that number is probably diminishing, right? So as there's more and more consolidation and as less and less of these early business models actually are demonstrated to be profitable, right? So, but let's just keep it simple and call it 200. Like there are, I think the last time I said there's 1 million .ai domain names registered now. Is that right? Am I crazy? Something,
No, that sounds fair.
it's the correct order of magnitude. And so, um, And I bet you 80 to 90% of those are owned by speculators. And we get those people emailing us every day trying to sell these domains. And they don't sell for those prices. The only time they do is when there's a buyer and the buyer shows up and says, I've decided that's the domain I need to be. But that's 100 to 200 people a year. And so you are better off going and buying a freaking lottery ticket. You have you know what I'm saying? Like you're, let's just say roughly you're 1 million people out there that are vying for one of 200 seats. That's a really bad game of hot potato. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? It's like musical chairs. You know, you lose $200 every time the music stops. So, anyways, I am super impressed with the volume and the growth of .ai, no doubt about it. But I think the whole market is so overhyped, and you have a lot of people paying a lot of money. They've created this super artificially inflated .ai market because people have paid crazy prices and they're hanging on for dear life and they still think the dream is alive. And everybody thinks they're going to be one of those 200 every year that gets the 6 or the 7-figure sale. And the truth of the matter is, the guys that are getting the 6 and 7-figure sales, yes, they've made all their money, but they're also holding bags of hundreds or thousands of these that cost $100 a year. And they're going to continue to hold the bag because they think their early success is going to lead to later success. And I don't think that's true. But anyways, that's enough on the .ai. Again, I'm not shitting on .ai at all. What I'm shitting on is the narrative that's being promoted in the market, and, you know, Escrow.com basically leading with, 300% increase in .ai prices. It's like, no, the value of .ai did not go up 300%. There are a few outlier domains that makes the mean price of these sales look very inflated. I'm responsible for several of those outliers. And the actual median price is more like 15, 20, 25 grand. And so, anyways, and again, the 15, 20, 25 grand, that's the real median. And again, that doesn't increase. Even if you have a price at 15, 20, 25 grand, you're probably priced at the market, but you're still vying for one of those 200 seats.
Well,
So
I do have a question here, Drew, for
talk to
you.
me.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
So, what are your thoughts on how much of this volume is based upon individual, again, like you said, speculators, or folks that are holding these domains with the pure intention of resell at higher value later date,
The
versus
transactions you're seeing, I bet you it's at least 80% or more end users.
yeah, well, what I was going to say, compared to perhaps a company or organization that's picking up one of these domains as a secondary domain to their
Mm.
.com or to
Oh,
whatever else they're hosting on.
no, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of purchases that are happening for defensive measure. That's the vast majority of the transactions that we've done were
Mhm.
companies, not the outliers, right? The people don't pay the outlier price unless they're going to utilize it, right? But
Yeah.
the vast majority of .ai domain sales that we've done have been defensive purchases by a company that operates on a .com.
Mhm.
And they just say, "Oh, I don't know what's going on with this .ai thing, but we probably need to have it." Or we don't want anybody else having it, so we might as well get it, right?
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of that, but the vast majority has been defensive, not offensive.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, that does kind of lead into the next question, which is, again, separating what you're saying is kind of the outlier versus the median, which, again,
Mhm.
fair enough. And this is what we also see in data. So, again, foreshadowing some of the things to come here, if you were to go down into some of the other, breakdown categories, you'll see that, certain individual quarters or months or whatever the case is, you'll see a massive spike in the valuation of, one particular category. And that's just because of one or two outliers that are kind of carrying the whole thing, right?
Yeah,
How
of
much
course.
do you think that the .ai is more carried by the outliers compared to the other, .com categories?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a statistical problem, right? So the broader your statistical, um, um, the base of
Sample size, yeah.
data sample size, exactly, that's the word I was
Yeah.
looking for. The broader your sample size, then the least is I can't speak today. The broader your sample size, then the lower statistical influence any individual sale has, right?
Yeah.
So in the .ai sample size, one large, if we're set, again, let's just say, we landed on 200s, 6 and 7 figure sales per year. And you guys are, I'm going to say 60 to 70% market share on non-marketplace third-party domain transactions, particularly high value. So let's just say that, 100 of those, or, it's 120, 150, whatever it might be, of those went through you.
Mhm.
Okay. If that's it, if all you've got is, it's just for easy math, if I'm going to do public math, always a bad decision. If you have 100 transactions that went through escrow, okay, of .ai domain names, and we're talking about only statistically meaningful, then one 7-figure sale is going to move the needle significantly across that sample size, right?
Yeah.
The mean price is going to adjust dramatically, just on one outlier sale. Never mind if you've got 5 outlier sales, right? If it's
Yeah.
more than 5, it's probably not an outlier, but in a sample size of 100. So I think that outliers in .ai or any other statistically minor category
Mhm.
is going to be extremely impacting. An outlier sale is going to be extremely impacting on the
Well,
median, on mean price.
totally. And this is part of it is also data reporting as well. It's like how much are you
Yeah,
willing
why
to
do you choose to
provide?
use mean instead of median?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
Why
So
not include both?
yeah, so this is one of those things where when I took a look at this report, one of the things that stood out to me was that, we this year and the last couple of quarters we have segregated the numbers out quite a bit more than in the past. So what I've noticed is because of that, we are essentially dividing and segregating our sample size further and further down. So to be honest, I wasn't the one that calculated, all these numbers, but I'm not 100% sure exactly, how much sample is left within each of these categories, right? And that's one of the ways that you can use to normalize some of the trends that you're seeing is, we can kind of parse out some of the stuff at the higher end and, find a new way to define that category, whatever the case is, to represent that data. But then you're getting to a smaller and smaller and smaller sample size to the point where how valuable is this data when all we're doing is looking at, less than 10 or 20 transactions, right?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
Yeah. I remember we did one of these episodes a year or two ago. And we were looking at it, and I thought, I looked at it, and I thought I saw hyphenated domain sales.
yeah,
Mean price was like $2.5 million, and I was
yeah,
like, "What the hell? What is going on here?"
yeah,
And subsequently, found out it was basically like, it was a content website, happened to hyphen domain. And so it's this one outlier sale. I
yeah.
don't imagine there's many hyphenated domains transacting through escrow.com because they don't sell for big money. And
Mhm.
so, one outlier sale is like, look, hyphenated domains, they're selling for $2.5 million now.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly what the numbers were. I'm paraphrasing, but, make
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
point.
No, if this was, if I were to give feedback on my own,
Yeah.
myself to the team that's actually putting this together, one of the things that I would say is, making it gets a little bit more clear how it is we're normalizing this data. And I do think we probably should do a little bit more normalization, right? So
Mm.
again, maybe using the example of like domain names with content, for example, that's fundamentally a different business model, fundamentally a different value proposition than just a normal domain name, right? Like a lot of the domain name with content, that's really just a website sale or really an acquisition of a digital business, right? And fundamentally, that should not be in the same category or measured in the same category as a normal 4-letter domain, for example, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the data currently does not do that. So again, you are looking towards maybe increasing the level of accuracy inside of some of this data to reflect more so some of the real estate trends, but at the same time, you are I think sacrificing some of the precision and vice versa depending on how you choose to cut the cake. right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
the risk of making things over segregated to the point where it's meaningless, but at the same time, we need to factor in the normalization methods that would actually represent the outcome that you are seeing in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Separate the signal from the noise.
Yeah. Let me throw you a curveball here. So how much of this, skewing the mean, let's just call it this observation that you're having, is to do with specifically .ai versus the domain industry as a whole? Because, part of the reason why I'm asking this is because when I look through the data and I actually know about the transactions that happen, behind the scenes that results in the data looking this way, I feel like this is a domain level trend. That certain high, valuations of domains with the right buyer, with the right market segment will simply outvalue everything else.
Oh, I mean, no, look, I mean, that's not a curveball. I mean, that's literally the basis of my business. Domains are up and to the right forever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, right buyer, right timing, price,
Yeah. But
buyer,
but
you just need a seller who's willing to say no. And then you get outlier prices and those prices keep stacking. They stack
but
year to year. I've been doing this, you know, a long time and they just keep going up. And the reason is that, there's increasingly less of them, and increasingly, more demand
mhm,
from a geographical standpoint, from a business sector standpoint, from a growth standpoint, from every 4 years, basically a new sector
yeah.
becomes the darling of funding, right? So all the
Mhm,
funding is flowing it's flowing to the NFTs and digital asset sector. And then now it's flowing all to the AI sector. And a few years ago, it's flowing all into the lead gen sector. And a
yeah.
few years before that, it was flowing all into like home services. And,
Mhm,
you know, it, it's cyclical. And basically it's every 4 or 5 years, the funding gets redirected
yeah.
and some new industry emerges and that creates a Cumbrian explosion of new companies and those companies are all chasing after the same generic brands and the only curveball is that now in this new Cumbrian explosion of AI companies there happens to be a domain extension that fits their bill. The reason why I don't believe that this is I just don't believe that. I literally don't believe that. It's nothing about the domain extension itself. It's a fundamental flaw that I think people overlook, which is simply that by definition, in my mind, if everybody's right about AI, well, then there's going to be like, I don't know, 5, 10, maximum 100 AI companies. Because it makes no sense. No, you don't need, what was it? I saw the most perfect example of everything I've been saying for 2 years now the other day. And it was like, somebody had like, I don't know, it was like, this wasn't it. And I'm sorry if this is your domain, but it was like writing.ai. Okay. This wasn't it. I'm just making this up. It's just purely theoretical. And, they were like, oh, but the best thing that AI is used for is writing. And so, writing.ai, and they launched a startup. It was a real startup. And they got funding. I think they raised like $8 million and they launched their thing. And, somebody out there thought, wow, I hit a home run. Yeah. And then they realized, oh, wait, actually, somebody with a $10 subscription to one of these LLMs, actually, they don't need to go to writing.ai and have another subscription or even log in or, just literally give it to Claude, give it to Grok, give it to whatever, so it doesn't make sense. By definition, every single one of your SaaS businesses, every single one of your little tools, they're all just going to be a function of a larger model.
mhm,
And so it doesn't make sense that there's going to be 10,000 AI companies, 100. What are you talking about? People are going to have maybe a year, 2, 3 years from now, no more than that. People are going to have one, maybe two subscriptions to different AI companies. And there's going to be businesses that are not AI companies.
mhm,
But there isn't going to be 100,000 AI companies. There isn't going to be 20,000 AI companies. There's going to be 1,000 AI companies. There's going to be 10 or
yeah.
20 because they're going to be competing on something, but basically it's all commoditized. Everything that you think you know and love is a commodity. Everything you worked your whole life for, it's now a commodity. Everything, every skill set you think you have, it's a commodity. And so, and again, I actually don't even necessarily buy in that we're at this AI apocalyptic or growth. I don't have a positive or a negative view. I actually don't think that there's any there yet. I think that this is a lot of hype. But All that said, even if it's right, there it doesn't make any sense that in the internet, it was the app layer, the application layer that got all the money, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't the browser, it wasn't the protocol, the TCP/IP. It was the application layer. It was the Facebooks and the Googles, and it was the application layer that garnered all the money. In the AI world, the application layer is going to be a part, right? We're still on the internet protocol.
Mhm.
And so the AI is the application layer. And there's only going to be a handful of them that need to compete. And everybody else is just a feature set of those companies. So, anyways, that's the long term. When I say long term, I mean literally like 3 years max.
Mhm.
View of why I just don't think that the AI thing can be more than a short term trend.
Well, one thing that I have seen, just on the tangent of like AI businesses in general, is I saw like a really good podcast that essentially compared the AI companies of today to kind of like
Mhm.
the browsers of the early 2000s, right? You got your Netscapes, you got your all those competitors, that were trying to vie for that space. And what folks eventually realized was, because that was the fundamental underlying platform that everything else was based upon, anybody who owned that bottom layer would essentially be able to eat everybody else's lunch, right? That's why Microsoft launched Windows, Internet Explorer, and it just ate everybody's lunch from that perspective. And then you got Google coming out with, theirs in the early 2010s and stuff like that. It's just a matter of, again, maturing of the actual technology platforms, but also maturing of the business
So
model.
what are you saying?
Consolidation.
You think that what? That with the AI company, the open AIs, the
So,
XAI, the Anthropic, that they're the browsers or what?
so I don't think they're the browsers, because, you still got the big platforms like the Microsoft, the Googles of world.
As an analogy, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm trying to say is that in order for their technologies like Anthropic's, Claude to run, they need underlying platforms to work. And eventually the underlying platforms will simply develop their own competitive competition to whatever the product set is, or the feature set is that is on the market, right? And eventually start, again, eating everybody's lunch. They'll bundle shit in. So what I'm saying here is, could it be a possibility that the way that the AI market and the way that AI businesses mature is to become an auxiliary technology function onto another base platform? Just like how, the browser technologies of today haven't disappeared, right? Like we still get, occasionally new browser companies that come into existence
But
that
you're
have.
saying the same thing I said. It's all going to be a commodity. All of this stuff, all the tools, all the little components, the bells and the whistles, they're all going to be a commodity on
Yeah,
an overarching platform, which
yeah,
is, it could be these LLMs, could be, you're right. Maybe the LLMs themselves get usurped by the larger platforms, the Googles and the Microsofts and the Amazons themselves, and maybe even Apple.
yeah.
Um, I don't care, right? Because either way, we're saying the same thing, which is that there isn't going to be 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 .ai companies. There's going to be
Well,
fucking 10 or
what I'm
5
trying to
or
say,
20.
yeah,
And
what I,
so, like, anyway,
yeah,
but I think the more interesting question is, um, eh, like, okay, going back to that same analogy,
hmm,
you have OpenAI already building robots, and they're building hardware devices, and they're building new ways for their customers to interact with the internet, intermediated by their AI in
yeah,
some form or another. XAI recently merged with X.com, and now whatever. I'm not even. But so, anyways, uh, they're doing their own robots. They're doing their own other hardware stuff. They're going to be using all of this AI and data to solve hard problems in all sorts of fields, including telecommunications. A- And so, again, these things are going to be vertically integrated. They're going to be everything. They're going to be vertical and horizontal. And
yeah,
so, like, again, I just, this is a conversation about domains. The fundamental thesis of what we're trying to discuss here is either going to be more .ai demand in the future or less .ai demand? I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you if
Yeah.
tomorrow there's going to be a $20 million .ai sale. Very well could happen. Don't care.
Well,
I've been
that's
saying this for 2 years, right? And obviously I was wrong over the last 2 years that the AI trend continued to go. And there was a lot of money made by a lot of people in the .ai market. And I am, God bless. What I'm trying to say is that what I saw 2 years ago and why I've been so adamant is I'm literally just understand where we're going. And yes, same in the NFT space. In the beginning, you know, I was skeptical. Somebody convinced me to get in. I made a whole bunch of money, but we're still got to the end of the game where everything went to zero. And so, like, it, 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 it's like the guy in the beginning that was going, this NFT thing isn't real. It's going to zero. Like, he was right. And he missed out on making a lot of money along the way. But a couple years later, turns out he was right. I was right 2 years ago, and I missed out on making. I still made a lot of money, but I missed out on making some money probably because I had this negative view, and that probably influenced some people and coming to me with certain opportunities. But I was still right, and I think that whether people see that now or they see it a year or 2 or 3 years from now, I don't know. I can't tell you when the train stops, but
Yeah.
nobody, including the smartest freaking people I know, as clients that I have this conversation with, nobody can tell me why there's going to be a bunch of demand for .ai domain names 3 years from now.
Well,
Nobody's given me a single argument that's like, oh no, you're going to have toothbrush.ai and you're going to have mydog.ai and why? What the hell are those things going to do exactly?
yeah.
Like,
So
you're going to have some toy that your child plays with, and it'll be called My Dog, and it'll be powered by freaking Grok, right? I don't know, but the AI element of it is going to be a third party.
yeah.
And so you're not selling AI, you're selling a toy for a child to play with. You're not selling AI, you're selling a car. You're not
Yep.
selling AI, you're selling, I don't know, an accountant or a lawyer or whatever it is. But the AI is just a tool, and that tool is going to be commoditized. And there's going to be 5, 10, 20 players competing for that commodity. And it's going to be a race to the bottom on cost. And everybody that thinks that they're going to have a SaaS business that people are going to pay extra for on top, you better get to work now because you have a window of opportunity of 1 to 3 years where people are going to do that. And then they're going to realize that actually all you're doing is you just put a prompt, you put a custom prompt on top of somebody else's LLM and then you charge monthly for it.
Yeah.
And at some point soon, people are going to figure out they can just put their own prompt on Claude, on Grok, on Chat, on whatever LLM they want to use. And so I literally, I welcome anybody listening that wants to come on this show and tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why in 3 years' time or more, there will be demand for .ai domains beyond the peripheral. Like, I don't give a shit. Okay. Ooh, there might be people still speculating. Great. There might still be 5 companies. I don't care. I care about things that move the needle, right? So are we talking about continued growth? Because if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And so are we talking about continued growth or are we talking about a trend that will ultimately die? In my opinion, and I think this is evidence-based, we're on a train that's going to hit a wall. And, God bless everybody that made a whole bunch of money along the way. Just jump off the train. That's all.
Yeah, I'm
So
with you on the observations and regarding, the end game and the business value of where all this kind of is kind of headed. I'm just, again, bringing this back to the conversation about actual domains. Could it be then
I
that,
think that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, is there going to be persistent demand or is there not?
well, that's the argument I was going to make about persistent demand is could it be that AI becomes an auxiliary function of a lot of other things? And then, the .ai domain, like it's not necessarily a place for you to host your business, but it's a place that everybody would want to just grab a .ai domain that complements their .com domain. And that's the end game. Like people just buy this and then they buy that as if there is any feature set that plays into it, right? If there's any
I
value.
mean, that's pretty much been .NET's selling proposition, right?
Yeah,
And so,
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, look, sure, but is that interesting? I don't know. God
Yeah.
bless. Again, anybody that wants to pay, everybody should do exactly what they believe to be the best thing with their money and their time. And all I'm trying to do is offer my perspective as a person that sells a lot of domains and thinks about these things. a lot. And anyways, all I know is the train that's not hitting a wall is .com.
Mhm.
And so that's my train.
You chew.
Choo choo. Choo choo. That's
Let's
it.
go.
I was
All right.
expecting you to say that.
All right. Yeah. So we covered a lot of ground on this. And I think obviously this was, sort of
But I
perpetuated
think it's
by the.
productive. I don't think it's, I don't
Oh,
think it's
no, no, no.
combative or anything
100%.
else.
Look, this is what I was going to say. I mean, the report's the report, right? And the report is framed in a certain
Well,
way.
no. That's actually my problem is that the report is not the report because
No, but the
even
report
yourself,
says, time out, time out.
it makes me question your judgment because you look at this report and you go, "Ooh, wow, how can you argue? The report
No,
says
no, no.
.ai sold
I was
promises
speaking
at
to
a
what
mean
you
price
talked
almost
about
as
at
soon
the
as .com."
time out. I'm going to use the mute button in a second. But I was just speaking about the editorializing that you spoke about at the very beginning, which started the whole thing. And I think that, those are interesting data points. I think there are obviously questions and sort of, there's nuance to all that. But, I mean, the report was led with the whole idea of, like you said, the clickbait, of, hey,
Yeah,
AIs are killing it.
Well, look,
So,
you get it.
but wait.
Then you scroll down. We get into the content, right? And then content suddenly, miraculously, we switch over to talking about median prices instead of mean. So, look, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's all bullshit. It's like everything in the world. The whole world is turtles all the way down. It's Fugazi, and everybody plays a role in it. And I don't give a shit. You can put your money into whatever it is you want, okay? And I truly don't care. I sleep perfectly at night. I don't care. I literally don't care. But I will not intellectually succumb to stupidity. And it is a absolute goddamn
Amen.
fact that mean on a small sample size, no signal. There's no price signal in the mean price of a small sample size. It's it's noise. It's 100% noise. There is no meaning to it. Anybody who's out there self-flagellating because they get so excited about the 300% increase, I got news for you. Okay? Like, there's no there.
no, I hear you. Tony, can we get the numbers with the median numbers?
Yeah, so I do have some ideas around that because the median number would reveal the individual cost of one particular transaction, which again, confidentiality being what it is.
No, not if you
One
don't
of the
say
things,
how many domain names are included in the sample size.
sure. But one of the solutions to
Oh,
this, I'm thinking, is should we start calculating things like standard deviation? Should we start
Well,
calculating
that's
that?
what I was thinking about. But look, I'm not trying to overcook the turkey here. But
Yeah,
yes, that's really what you
Yeah.
should be doing.
yeah.
hey man, data, data, data. I can't make jars without clay. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, the better access to the data, the more informative it is, the more accurate that it is, then I think the better it is for everybody. So, all right, well, look, and like we say about the .ai domains, this is the last thing I'll say, and then we can move on because we only, we're gonna use
You know
all
what
our
I
time
find
here.
super interesting is the
Oh,
domain
we
names
don't move on.
Almost.
domain names containing exact English words by TLD.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm looking at actually is .org, and it's like more or less just box steady,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
but basically the whole time scale, it's like more or less, but more or less steady. And it's interesting because it doesn't match with what we are seeing. We're seeing an increased demand and higher prices, not astronomically. We're not talking about your bloviation in .ai. We're talking about just a tangible increase in sales volume and price of .orgs.
Hmm.
And it doesn't seem to be reflected in the data,
Well,
interestingly.
.org would mostly be out of the United States, would it not?
No, I would
Not
say mostly
necessarily,
in the
no.
United States, almost
Yeah, exactly.
exclusively in the United States, I would say.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying is .org is pretty much a United States only.
Yeah, for the most
Yeah.
part. There's a
So,
lot of corrupt NGOs in Africa as well.
well, those aside, talking about the real meat of the
In
data here.
Minnesota, maybe is you want to make? Are we
Yeah,
gonna
in Minnesota, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they hand reg that shit, you know what I'm saying? Because they use typos. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
They don't use, what was the good one? That was good. It was like, what was the name of it?
I
Something
don't.
learning said.
Yeah, I don't
It was
remember. But
like
yeah,
missing letters. They'll say
anyway.
they like the typo version.
Yeah, but on that observation of the .org, I think one of the things that we're seeing here at Escrow is that a growth in international activity here on the platform. Like one of the big observations was a substantial notable growth in China based
Yeah.
activity. Well, and this is something that I was sharing with Sophia earlier as well. Is on Escrow you don't really see a lot of China to China transactions because there's just no need, right? Because China has their own systems, their own ways of moving money and all that kind of stuff. Fine.
Well, it
Fair.
would literally be like
It would
brain
be,
dead to say, like, let's send money out of China to send it
yeah,
back into China. Like,
especially since we
that's
don't
like,
support RMB anyways. So it's
yeah,
just you'll be converting to USD and converting back. So
yeah.
anyways, the type of transaction that we see is China to global, right? Or global to China. We're selling a domain to and from, the China market. Same thing as Europe, same thing as,
But this is
APAC.
also cyclical, right? Now,
Yeah.
the China cycle to me seems to be a business cycle. Like, so roughly 8 to 10 years. And for every 8 to 10 years, you see a massive boom in China. And I think that this has to do with currency controls personally. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, um, uh, it is cyclical. We've seen
Yeah.
this, right? We'll see a giant boom in the last 18 months, 2 years, giant boom.
Yeah.
Uh, um, uh, well, let me think about this for a second. Uh, it actually is more like 3 out of 8 to 10 years,
Mhm.
because what happens is you get a big boom where domains are going from the West into China, and then it cools off, and those domains come out of China and sell back into the West.
Mhm.
And then 8 years later, boom, again. And I think that this has to do with credit cycles and so sort of global macro. But um um
Well, I mean, China's
that
always
would be
been
my observation. But you got the data.
I mean, China has always been known to have very strict currency controls and where and how and when people can move money around and so forth. So,
Yeah.
regardless of if it's for an individual or for a business, what we do see is currently right now in the current state of affairs, there is a increasing need for, global transactions coming in and out of China.
Are
So,
you seeing more going in or out of China
um,
Person.
both actually.
in equal weight, or what? If you have it, just and I'm not
Yeah,
putting a gun to your head, but like,
no, I get it.
what's your gut instinct? Do you think there's more deals going into
I
China,
think
selling
I
in?
think it is both. I think it is both. I think there is again, I don't have a list of transactions off the top of my
Yeah,
head,
yeah, yeah,
but from the ones that I've seen anecdotally, I've seen it go in both directions. I've seen
yeah.
Chinese buyers spending massive amounts of money to buy, these domains and keeping them within China. And then there are also those who are looking to liquidate, out of China as well. So again, are those tied to individuals that are, moving in and out of the country? I don't know. I have no visibility into that, right? But what I will say is, the appetite for Chinese buyers and sellers to engage with the Western market is increasing, and that specific appetite for Western currencies have also been increasing.
Mm. That's interesting because I think
Yeah,
in the past it was mostly buyers from China transacting through escrow and maybe mostly supported by Chinese brokers, at
yeah,
least from my time hit there. And that's when there was a huge reduction as well, especially from like 3 characters or 3 number .coms. That obviously still escrow doesn't see as many because those are China to China usually transactions and but you're saying that you've seen an increase of Chinese, buyers and sellers transacting through escrow, but then your overall quarterly report remains steady overall throughout the years. So where are those, I guess, American buyers going?
Well, one thing that I will note that I guess probably aligns with what you're saying is that we have seen, in particular the last 6 8 months,
mm,
a massive increase in number of buyers, and they are in particular Chinese,
Mhm.
Hong Kong, some in the Middle East, but
yeah.
in particular Chinese buyers that want to pay with USDC or
Mm.
Mm,
UST and stable coins. And so I think that, and it makes sense that they're using stable coins as a way of getting around some of these currency controls. And which is, uh uh
well, but there are very
a proud
limited.
advocate of,
Yeah.
democracy and freedom. I have no problem with anybody trying to get around currency controls. But um uh that
Okay,
is
good.
something that totally popped up like out of nowhere. Like we used to do, we used to do a lot of Bitcoin transactions and we still do, but this whole like people wanting to pay with USDC, USDT, or only willing to pay with USDC or USDT, that is relatively new. It's the last 6 to 8 months. It's
Well,
primarily out of China.
the thing is, in
And
China, you can't.
no, yeah, you
There's
can't
very
send.
limited options. There's very
But
limited
what's
options.
interesting, and the reason I think domains represent such an interesting asset class for Chinese investors is that the Chinese government will approve. So you can't, as an individual, send more than $50,000 US equivalent of RMB out of the country ever, right?
Yeah.
Or not RMB, but the equivalent in USD. And but you can get business exceptions. And so, like, it is not uncommon that we'll see, like, have a contract. We have to do a contract, and that contract comes back with all these different stamps of, people that somehow they've gotten approval to make this purchase because it's for a business, right? And so they do get these concessions to send more than the currency control amount out of China, and so that makes domains, because they are a business asset or can be used as a business asset, that I think it makes it an interesting asset class for them to overcome perhaps some of those currency controls.
Well, 100%. And this is where I wanted to ask you, Drew, from your experience, what do you know about, I guess, the Chinese buyers who are specifically using things like stablecoins to transact? Because my interpretation of it and my understanding of it, and I could be wrong here, is that in China, there are very limited options for you to actually access cryptocurrency marketplaces, right? And those are also very heavily regulated in KYC.
Nah, I don't think that's true. I think that that's, what the media would have you believe, but I think that people that actually are relatively tech savvy and, you know, have the will, if there's a will, there's a way.
Sure.
I know quite a number of Chinese that are extremely deep
Active.
in crypto.
Apt. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think it's really that big of an obstacle for people
Okay.
that want to. Maybe for your just average Joe, but I don't think that it's really an obstacle.
Well,
Um,
but why stablecoins and why not like Bitcoin?
well, okay, so unfortunately, despite my many efforts, you guys do not accept transactions in any form of cryptocurrency, whether it's
Yeah.
stablecoins, Bitcoin, or anything else. And so we then have to use alternative platforms. And uh, look, there's problems. Okay, the problems are that none of these are particularly fast or efficient at processing these transactions. So
Mhm.
if you're paying in USDC, then you have a fixed stable price, right?
Right.
Stable coins are pegged to the US dollar. And so your price doesn't change with time. Your price is stabilized. But if you're paying in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency that is not a pegged currency, then uh, you are, I actually hate the word currency. I don't think Bitcoin is a currency. I think it's money, but it's not currency. But anyways, without getting into the weeds of that, let's say you and I make a deal. We're going to sell XYZ dot AI for, uh, I don't know, $15,000. Okay. And so, you say, great, I'll pay it, Andrew. Let's do the deal. And, I'm going to pay you in Bitcoin. Okay. So let's just say, that's, I don't know, zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. Great. So, you're going to pay me, zero point 0.2 Bitcoin, whatever the number is.
Mhm.
And, uh, if we haven't agreed on a fixed amount of Bitcoin, we've agreed on a dollar price, then
Right.
by the time, so now let's say we both agree to an escrow transaction, you send the Bitcoin. By the time that Bitcoin arrives, by the time they accept it, by the time they flag the transaction as, okay, we've got the Bitcoin and, it's time to transfer the domain name. In general, in my experience, and again, this isn't a reflection on escrow.com because you do not process transactions in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. But um, in my experience, it's generally like 2, 3, 4, 5 days by the time between both parties log in and accept escrow to that third-party escrow platform says, we've got the money, transfer the domain.
Yeah.
You're talking about minimum 2 days, could be 5. And in that time, Bitcoin could have gone from 60 grand to 100 grand, or it could have gone from 100 grand to 60 grand. And
Mhm.
so it's impossible to peg a price. And that makes escrow very complicated. And it puts people in a very difficult position, a position I've been in many times, which is like, okay, we've agreed on a price. If we can't transact in an instant, then basically that price is a moving target. And then one party's going to be unhappy. If the price of Bitcoin goes up, the guy who paid is in Bitcoin is going to say, oh, I should be paying less Bitcoin. If the price of the Bitcoin goes down, then the guy trading the domain is going to say, oh, no, I want more Bitcoin. Now, if it goes that way and the guy says, I want more Bitcoin, well, now you might have a problem where the guy says, well, we agreed on a price. I sent the Bitcoin, price of Bitcoin went down. And now you're saying you're not transferring the domain unless I send more Bitcoin. That's not fair. And then I said, well, then you don't get the domain. Right. And then it's like, okay, I'll send more Bitcoin. Well, the price of Bitcoin went down more. Right. If we were in the situation we've been in for the last few weeks, the price of Bitcoin went down more. And so
Yeah.
you said, I'll send a little more. And by the time it gets flagged 2 days later, it's like, oh, the price of Bitcoin went down a little more. And so, I'm exaggerating, but it can be a very dangerous, difficult, problematic way to do a transaction if you can't transact in real time, or if you haven't agreed upon a fixed amount of, the proxy currency that you're going to transact in.
No, fair enough. And what you're speaking to is essentially just volatility, right? Like buying up the
Yeah,
volatility
exactly. It's all about
between the buyer and seller party. But that's Bitcoin's of course notorious for slow blockchain processing to begin with, and also the transaction fees, right, on the blockchain is also very high. But there are alternatives, right? Like I know Ethereum's a lot faster. I don't know some of the other smaller cryptocurrencies that are out there. I'm sure there are platforms that are far faster and more efficient.
You don't want to have that conversation with me right now, Tony.
Okay.
No, you've already had the AI one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take a
Give me
break
another
now.
hour. We're gonna sit here.
No, but I mean, I think with all, so look, we did a bunch of Bitcoin deals, obviously, as we usually do in last year. And, we couldn't do them on escrow because you guys don't support it. But, those deals we are, just have to try to account for the exchange risk.
No, but the point we were just trying to make is about the
why the
just
Chinese
about
would
China.
use
It's about
stable coins as opposed to like
yeah. I mean, it was
understood.
again anecdotal evidence of what you're saying, that there seems to be a trend of more and more deals going in and out of China. I think that makes sense. The last wave was like really China accumulating a lot of domains. There's a lot of very valuable 2-letter, 3-letter, one-word.coms that are now owned in China. And so as domains in general are booming, which I think your data also supports and what we're seeing, then obviously a higher proportion of those end user domain sales are also going to be attributed into China. So, and we're seeing that with, this sudden demand for doing transactions in USDC and USDT. It's interesting. I whatever, that's probably not even worth getting into, but like, I can see that there's probably this interesting little cycle actually. Like, let's just walk through quickly. I'm not going to hang up a lot of time on this, but like, so somebody in China, mainland China, buys a domain, a good domain. Somebody in China, then a few years later, they sell that domain. They make 10x profit. They bought it for 100, they just sold it for 1 million. Why would they take that money back into China? They don't want to take it back into China. They can't get it back out. So now it's out of China. So what are they going to do? Well, they're probably going to put it into a USDC because they can't put it in a bank account, right? So they're going to send it to somebody who's going to take a little tax, and they're going to put it into a stable coin, and then they're going to hold that stable coin in a crypto wallet that they can have anywhere on earth, right? Theoretically. So then what? What are they going to do with the money? Well, probably going to buy more domains. And so it is interesting. They accumulated a lot of very good domains into China. As I said, those domain names now start selling to end users in the next cycle. That money now stays out of China. What do they use it for? They use it to buy more domains. And so, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely interesting trend. Let's see if it continues. I mean, we definitely saw, China, we call it the China wave that happened going back 10 years ago, 2015, and there was a point where you had, the families in, and we tried at the time to understand sort of the dynamics of why it was driving so much of the market. And it was the short domains, the numeric domains. You had families in China investing in domain names, and domain names being a way to either circumvent currency controls or just the idea that domains are an investable asset. They were the short and numeric stuff we're trading in a very liquid manner. We're tracking it in like almost like on stock apps and things. And we've covered a lot of this on the shows in the past. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we, get if we're it'd be nice to get then if that's the next wave, coming through. And it doesn't take a lot, right, to move the needle.
Uh,
So
all right.
go ahead, Drew.
Um, I'm looking at threeletter.com. This was a little surprising to me. You're again, we're talking uniquely. It's interesting that suddenly everything's about median price except when we talk about AI sales. When we talk about AI sales, we're talking about mean, and we're going to, because that gives you this headline of 300% increase in data. Anyways, the whole industry thinks that they're super clever because they're 300% increase in data. Shut up. Anyways, threeletter.com domain names. I see the median price of threeletter.com's dropped from 120 to 47. I find that super interesting because, I mean, I guess I can only attribute that to like there must be a lot of wholesale threeletter.com transactions happening, which is also interesting and which also anecdotally leads me to believe that a lot of that demand is actually going to China.
Mhm.
And so that's an interesting anecdote as well. But that's for the median price to be 47 grand. You need a lot of wholesale transactions because I mean, we do a fair amount of threeletter.com sales. And I mean, I don't know, I can only think of one that we sold under 100 grand in the last 2 years,
Well,
maybe.
here's where I want to kind of chime in because yes, the median price is more or less kind of held steady, right? But what that's not to say that this data shows anything about what's happening at the higher end, right? Let's just
Yeah, because
imagine
you're
for a
ignoring the
moment.
mean now. Now suddenly suddenly you guys want to talk about the median instead of the mean.
But the
This is
thing
where
is,
the mean actually could give us
yeah,
some signal. If we had, and again, it's meaningful because you have a large sample size. But well, actually, I don't know how many 300.com transactions happen, but um, I have to believe that it was a pretty decent amount if the the median price is 47 grand. Um, but anyways, neither here nor there.
yeah,
I think this is actually a really interesting. I can't make a lot of sense, but I think there are some very interesting anecdotes that come from that. To see that median price drop down to 47 grand
yeah.
indicates that a lot of wholesale transactions happened in the threeletter.com market. And you do see this nice, very steady. That's what you want to see as an investor. This is why always said threeletter.coms to me, it's like a brick of gold with a lottery ticket. That's what it is. You got a brick of gold. They very rarely go down in value. If you're buying, in and around that median price, probably let's say the right price for an investor today is 20 to 30 grand, depending on the quality, 20, 35 maybe for really good stuff. And although the really, really good stuff, doesn't come to market very often anymore, but at the wholesale. But
Yeah.
um, I think that yeah, I think that if you included the mean here, my guess is you're probably looking at more like 150, 180, if I had to guess,
I think it would be a lot higher, to be honest,
maybe
because
even a
again,
lot higher.
yeah, it's really just the idea that I think this perpetuates throughout the data set, besides just what we're talking about with .ai, is the idea that on the high end, things are exploding, and on the wholesale end, it's more or less flat, and it will continue to show that trend, right? But this data didn't show that because this is literally the median, one dot on the sample. So I would be curious to see, again, if there's a way for us to kind of compare medians with like standard deviations, maybe put a standard
Yeah,
deviation bar there or something like that to see, is the
yeah,
standard deviation getting bigger and bigger and bigger
yeah,
between the
yeah, yeah,
normal
yeah, yeah,
transactions and the ones at the top?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. The rest, I mean, to me, I've said this before. I think for 4letter.coms, it would be much more informative. I think that this data doesn't mean anything without pulling out the 4letter.coms that represent a word, right? 4letter.com strings, acronyms, random strings of 4 letters. That's sort of a commodity, and that commodity has a price, a liquid price, call it $1,000. And uh but then you have 4letter.com words, which in my opinion are like basically the holy grail of domains, is a 4-letter, easy to spell, pronounceable word. But in general, 4-letter words sell for good money, right? And so even ones with negative connotation, they still sell for 5-6 figures. So a 4-letter word should be extracted from this data, and we should have 2 different category sets: one for 4-letter words, or 4-letter, maybe you could say everything included, and then one for just 4-letter random strings, no dictionary words.
Yeah, so there's always that, but I also think, what we are just saying about standard deviations and stuff like that, I think that will also shed a light on this as well. I don't think you necessarily need to separate that data set out, to be honest. I think just even at the top end, you'll be able to see that, the valuations for those are going to explode. And if they are
Maybe,
exploding, no, it's going to
maybe,
be, the
maybe, but you're not gonna see like some 4letter.com. Like, for example, I sold abtc.com to Trump's family for their Bitcoin thing, right? That's a random 4-letter, right? And it sold for, I don't remember, almost 7 figures. And
Mhm.
so, um, uh, you know, that would be a meaningful standard deviation above a randomized, above the data on a random 4letter.com. But it is a mixed signal, or it's even noise if we're trying to analyze what does a 4-letter word sell for,
Yeah.
right? So I think it is 2 different data sets, to be honest, between 4-letter, because what you have to understand is there's not many. There's really only a handful of, let's say, commoditized categories in domains. It's
Mhm.
2letter.coms, which have a very low sell-through rate, so it's difficult to statistically analyze. 3letter.coms, slightly more. 4letter.coms, slightly more, or a lot more. And then numerics. So you got two numbers, 3 numbers, 4 numbers, 5 numbers, 6 numbers, and those are all statistically relevant, um, um, with varying sell-through. But
Yeah.
um, those are the commodity categories, and so I think those are really interesting and powerful signals, because what those commodities, even though that's sort of the wholesale commodity floor price, the fact that there is a floor price, the fact that there's sort of a known and observable floor price at which these can be liquidated at a moment's notice into the market, and there's very little fluctuation. It's not highly volatile, that floor price.
Mhm.
Um, that is a very important indicator. That's a really important signal in the domain space. In fact, it's the most valuable price signal that we have in the domain space, is the price movement of the floor of those commoditized categories. That's the most important price signal we have. The rest is all based on outliers. The rest is all based on hope and narrative, and wow, that 4-letter word sold for a lot of money, and that's important to know. But every single one is a snowflake. They're not a commodity, right? And so there's not a lot of signal. I've always said, like, when we're talking about premium domains, um another domain that sold is not a good indicator of what your domain is going to sell for, because every
Yeah.
domain is different. The buyer for every domain is different. The circumstances, the variables, they're all different.
Mhm.
And so the only things that are relative are these commodities, these random 4-letter strings, random 3 letters, random 2 letters, you know, and then the numerics. These categories are a true commodity, and they offer real price signal. And then the variation on that price signal kind of tells you, is the domain industry directionally moving up or down or neutral, right?
No, fair enough. And now I'm just thinking in my head, how easy it'll be to actually separate that data. Because you'll have to have
Yeah.
a person actually go through every transaction at that point forward,
Yeah.
but that's
I
that's
mean,
not
look,
currently
again,
true.
I'm just trying
Well,
to sort of parse out, like, where can we find value in this data? Obviously, everybody's grateful you published this, and anything is better than nothing. But, if we're really going to take meaning from it and we're going to analyze it, in an intellectually honest way and not just, 300% increase in .ai. Like if we're going to actually be intellectually honest about the data, I think it is important to have, clean signals.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep, I think that is a very clear takeaway from today's show is that the data is, helpful,
All right.
and obviously useful data is more useful than obfuscated data. So let's and consistency is good, right? If you're gonna have median for most of the charts, like it should just be median or mean or both. Like, you know, the more data, the better, probably, especially if it's as simple as saying, hey, this is the one with the mean, this is the one with the median, and expanding those to make them more available so everybody can then parse it how they want. So I think that's all good.
MediaOptions is the industry's leading domain broker specializing in domain acquisitions, high-value domain sales, and domain name consultation. As pioneers and thought leaders on the subject of the domain aftermarket and domain name value, plus through their clear domain acquisition service, MediaOptions offers startups and established corporations an unparalleled scope of high-value domain options, providing access to domain names and curation technologies not available elsewhere. MediaOptions believes in the power of a great domain name and is dedicated to helping you obtain yours. Call or email today to put a domain to work for you.
So in the meantime, it's all about the clickbait. All right, what else, Drew? What else you got? We got about 10, 15 minutes, man.
All right. So, look, I again congratulate Tony on his promotion to director of operations. And in this role, I have very high expectations and some demands. And so I will start this out by saying that I think that MediaOptions, myself and my team, have been really strong partners and have looked at ourselves as partners of Escrow.com for a very long time. But in particular, over the last 12 to 18 months, I would say that Escrow.com has fallen off dramatically in its level of customer service and in the competency in which those transactions have been handled.
Mhm.
And I don't know, that blame can fall on anybody except for the leader. And I take that same blame upon myself when my company falters in any sort of way. I have tried to get your fearless leader, Matt Berry, on a call. I don't seem to be important enough for Matt to get on a call with me. And so I'm going to simply lay out a few of my grievances that we've had over the last year or so with Escrow. And I want to know if you have answers to how Escrow.com is looking to address these problems. And maybe you don't have answers, but at a minimum, what I'm hoping for is that I'm acting as a voice of reason and as a voice for our industry, because I know that many people have these same concerns. And many people may have not even identified that they should have some of these concerns. And so what I want to do is highlight them. And I want to say upfront that I have absolutely no interest or bias here beyond the improvement of escrow.com. And that is all I've asked for. I've asked for my grievances to be heard and for them to be addressed. And I think I've earned that with my loyalty to escrow.com over a really long period of time that unfortunately over this last period of time, I've had to lessen because of the items which I'm about to note. Now, I am not going to list any domain names or any identifiable information because that wouldn't be fair to me, you, or the customers involved. But there are what I think is useful here is that these represent categories of problems, and those problems need to be addressed. So, this first one, okay, was a co-brokerage transaction. It was us and a co-broker from the industry that everybody knows and loves. And there were very clear, things laid out about how the commissions should be split. And yet somehow our fees as broker were being paid out to the other broker. And then it's like, we didn't even notice because I just always trust that we get paid. And then my
Wait, let me
fearless,
correct you.
my fearless Latina that Matt made the dire mistake of allowing me to take from escrow.com, uh, was able to, audit some of our transactions and realize that literally we were not being paid. And
Let me
so
correct you right there, because
this
it
is
wasn't to the
typically
broker, it was to the seller.
Yeah.
What?
It wasn't a co-broker agent. I set up that deal when I was working there. That's how I know that it was beautifully done. And of course, but the funds were not being sent to the broker; it was sent to the seller. I'm just,
Right, the seller would get it.
No,
clarifying
and
that
again, I'm not trying
because
to. This is not the time or the place
right.
for that. But the
But
point
I don't want
is,
the broker. But I don't want the broker to come out there and be like,
no, look,
you
we're
know, I
not
would have
saying
told
anything.
you.
No. My point is simple. That is inexcusable. You guys have one job. That's to pay people. Take possession
Mhm.
of funds, take possession of property, and distribute it according to the terms agreed upon. One job. And that is the job we expect. And I, unfortunately, have blindly trusted Escrow.com to do. And yet, in particular, over the last 12 months, we have observed that, oh shit, you guys aren't doing that job. I personally don't feel that these are petty concerns because it involves my money, right? And so the second transaction I'm going to discuss, more or less, it's the same thing. It's about disbursements and those disbursements not going to the right place. And then, really it's about the consequence of that. And then how is it getting dealt with? In this particular case, I had to wait 3 months to get my money. And that seems absurd. And it was like, we're going to wait until we get the next payment to pay you, even though we made the mistake and sent your money to somebody else. Right. And it's like, no, that doesn't smell right. Don't accept it. Right. So anyways, that's unacceptable and needs to be changed. Next. This is one that I really and I understand that where you guys stand on this, but I have given it quite a bit of thought, and I think I'm right, you're wrong. So, um, we had a transaction which went years on a domain name holding, and then the buyer ultimately defaulted. Now, again, I blindly trust that. Now, I don't know, we have 60 domain holding transactions outstanding at any given time, right? And so I don't know what the number is, but it's a lot. And so I'm not going in there until I hired Sofia, going in there and checking every single one that we're getting our payment. I just assume every month we're getting our payments, right? And so, anyways, I don't always notice that these things end up in default. And so, anyways, the transaction went into default in October, and then we happened to, or when I say we, Sofia noticed in November. Uh, uh, no, sorry, in what are we in February? In February, that
No, November.
what do you mean?
It was in November. Late November, I noticed. Just a month.
Okay, anyways,
Either one.
uh, yeah, okay. Yeah, actually, they went into default way before that. But anyways, in November, Sofia noticed that the domain had been defaulted on. We had to then ask you guys to start the cure period. And then it took, I don't even know how long between the person defaulting to us actually getting the domain back. And we had to push for that. Like, I think that that's a really important component of the seller side trust with escrow.com, where if somebody defaults, I want that cure period started immediately. Like, that should just be a part of the deal. If
Yeah.
somebody defaults on their payment, that's their end of the bargain. If they default, cure period starts. When the cure period ends, I shouldn't have to come asking for your domain, my domain back, right? That should be instigated by escrow.com, and escrow.com, we're paying an extra fee every month, right? And so that must be instigated by escrow.com to say, oh, by default, cure period's over. I want an email telling me cure period's over, and I want my domain back immediately, right?
Mhm.
It's a liability for you to be sitting on a domain name after the cure period has ended, 100% liability for you. There's no benefit to you whatsoever. It's costing you money for renewals, and if it renews during that period, and it's a legal liability. So those domains need to be returned. It cannot fall into a deep, dark hole that nobody even knows it's in until we wake up and realize, hey, this guy's not paying anymore. It's been months now. Where's my domain? Right? So that's that one. I'm going to skip some of these because it's a little too nitty gritty for this medium of discussion.
Mhm.
I think the last one that I'm really going to get into here is one that's also really problematic, and that's confidentiality. Right? We're paying extra for concierge service, and then what happens is that oftentimes the person acting as concierge between the buyer and the seller forget who they're talking to. And they send the buyer information to the seller and the seller information to the buyer. And it's like, what that creates you cannot even begin to imagine the amount of liability and negligence that creates for us as a broker.
Mhm.
It's unacceptable. Again, it's like, why are we using you? We're using you to maintain confidentiality, increase trust, and ensure a safe transition between funds and property. And the confidentiality part is as big or more of a value proposition than any of those other components. And so, especially as a broker. And so, anyways, look, one thing that the underlying thread in all of this is that there is disharmony in the land. One hand isn't talking to the other. People doing certain things may not be qualified for the job they're doing. I don't know. It's not my problem. I'm a customer.
Mhm.
But what I do know is that you've made it impossible for us to do all of our business with you anymore because you're losing my money. And your only job is to pay me my money. That's your only job. So, anyways, I um I have tried to take a more direct approach on this, but the truth of the matter is that when I speak to others, my peers in the industry, everybody shares the same concerns. Many people were not aware of some of these issues, but we are seeing them firsthand. And the last 12 months in particular, it's really been painful.
Mhm.
It's been painful. And
And real
honestly, to me, I personally feel insulted because I have spent a tremendous amount of time with 4 generations of people that were managing escrow.com on behalf of Freelancer, on behalf of Matt, and I'm not seeing results of the feedback I give. I'm not seeing improvement. I'm seeing the opposite. I'm seeing dislocation and chaos. And I don't think it's necessary. I know that it can be done better. And we as the industry need escrow.com to do better.
Mhm.
You guys are one of the most important businesses in our industry. You serve an absolutely critical role, and it's a very narrow function. It's a boring business. It's a vanilla ice cream business, and you just have to serve it right. That's it.
Mhm.
And I know some of your customers, including us, are not easy all the time. But I think if you built the tools we asked for, you'd have to deal with us less. But anyways, you've been a good sport, and none of this is directed at you. I think you actually have been a tremendous light in a cave of darkness over the last year. And so I welcome your transition into director of operations, where you actually now maybe have the authority, if Matt will take the ball and chain off your ankle, and allow you to. I think you're incredibly competent, and I think that it's exciting to uh, see you in a role that can actually make a difference, right? I know you had to sort of talk out both sides of your mouth before, but you're in a role now that has some authority to make some changes. I don't think that these are like big, costly changes. We're not trying to like turn the Titanic on a dime here. It's just quality control, it's process control, it's,
Well,
improve
and really
service,
quick,
and it's
Drew,
a lot of this. A lot of this. In fact, I would almost go so far as to say 80% is communication. It
yeah,
really is.
well, and I think it's worth mentioning because we told you some of this stuff offline, right? And it's under the context of last year we diversified some of the flow of our business, right? We did not do as much of our transactions through escrow. We used other providers, we used other methods, partially because of deals either you guys couldn't do or because some of the challenges that we were having, and which compelled us, to start moving some things around in order to
Like,
accommodate.
on the note of what you just said, I actually would like to ask you a question, Tony. Why, you know, I've always gone to bat for escrow and said, like, look, the extra KYC, the extra due diligence, all of this stuff, it's for our benefit. It allows me to not have to worry about it.
Mhm.
And I've always said that. I've said it publicly many times. I've said it when I got my awards. I've said it a million times. But again, in the last 12 months, it's literally become almost freaking impossible to get people through this KYC process.
Mhm.
And we've lost multiple deals as a result of it. So what is it? Why do you guys have it?
Or we moved them, or we moved deals because of it. I think is probably even more.
Well, no, we lost two deals. Two deals that come to, I can immediately think of two deals that we literally lost because the amount of time it was taking or the friction. But neither here nor there. My question is this. Why is your process so much more cumbersome than with others? Is it
Mhm.
because you do like, and I ask this because it could be, and I'm open to this, but you tell me,
Yeah.
is it because you have more regulatory oversight than others do? Is it because you think you're just doing a better job and you guys care about KYC more than others do? Is it, I have no idea, but
Yeah.
Regulatory. Good.
Yeah, so I'll try to answer that last bit first. Firstly, I'll say, Drew, I appreciate you telling me this, because I would rather hear from you than to hear from anyone else, right?
yeah.
And I know it's coming from a good place when it's coming from you, so I appreciate that.
And I've been trying to tell this to Matt for 12
Yeah.
months, for the record. Like, I've literally
I'm
been
sure.
trying to
Yeah.
tell Matt this for the record for a long time.
So on the actual regulatory front, well, what I will say is escrow.com does face more stringent controls and regulatory elements than most other companies because we do operate with licensing across many, many jurisdictions and not just the jurisdictions of few. Now, particularly, I will highlight one of the big things is that because we're a California-specific licensed escrow service, that jurisdiction and the level of requirements coming from there is significant, above and beyond what everybody else does. And
Interesting.
I'll use
Yeah.
this time to specifically address, two differences, one of which is to do with licensing. Now, there's a very big misconception that escrow license is the same everywhere. It's not. For example, if we were to set up a brand new, California-based entity that does escrow, and versus if we were to set up that same brand new entity in Minnesota or somewhere
Mhm.
else where the legislation is different. For example, in Minnesota, the reason why I use that as an example is because Minnesota does not even recognize escrow as an entity. Like in their legal code and systems of regulation, the word escrow does not exist. So
Interesting.
what that means
So
is
where does that fall on a notary? Does that fall on
so
a
it's different
lawyer?
in those
It's a different.
cases. Yeah,
Yeah.
in those cases, in those jurisdictions, there is what we call money transmission licenses instead, which
Ah,
it basically allows a company to generically move money. There is no specific KYC. Well, I shouldn't say no, but much fewer KYC requirements. There
It's
is
less
much
stringent.
less. Yeah, much
It's
less
less
due
yeah.
diligence.
stringent.
Shout out to my boy Charlie Shrem. Did a little time for not having his money transfer license. You can look back. We had an episode with my boy Charlie Shrem.
But long story short, we do have more requirements than others, and again, because we also operate internationally, we have to comply with the other countries. For example, Canada and Australia have different requirements as well.
Yeah.
That's why, for example, so go ahead, Sophia.
No, I was just going to say, like, that is true. Australia, for instance, you have to do KYC, whether regardless of the transaction size, and you have to complete like a UBO form and so and so. Like
That whole
overall the
UBO
type
thing,
of
that's
license.
brand new. I mean, that's like in the last, I don't know, 6, 12 months. Like,
Yeah, but
we've
it is
never
new
had.
No, it isn't.
And
Well,
is
I
that a
mean,
California thing? Is that a
it's
California thing?
I think it's California specific in terms of the US, but then you have Australia who does it as well, and Canada. It's been a thing for Canadian citizens for the past, I want to say, like 4 years at least.
Yeah.
So can I sorry to interrupt you. I just want to drill down on this a little bit because it really is something actually super interesting to me because
Mhm.
to me, this whole market of escrow is like so messy. There's no way to really compare the cost benefit analysis of using various services. And I think that's such an interesting thing actually. But so when me as a broker, when I'm setting up an individual transaction, are the KYC requirements different based
Yes.
upon the jurisdiction of my individual buyer and seller?
Yes. Yes, and
I didn't
also
realize that. I
the
thought it was
insurance.
ubiquitous. I thought
Yeah.
basically everybody fell under this sort of blanket.
No.
Okay, so you're saying that sometimes I might
That's why I ask
my
you. That's why I
one of the
sometimes ask
parties might
you
need to do
where
the
they're from.
deal and and sometimes not.
Exactly. And that's
And
why I
that's
sometimes ask
jurisdictional.
you. Exactly, that's
Ah,
geographical. And also insurance, and it's jurisdictional in regards to the level of the verification that they have to go under. So it's not just like maybe the individual is someplace, but the company is registered somewhere else. So that is also something to take into consideration. It's not as easy as people think it is, and how other providers make it seem like. So I'll give Escrow that. Also, I think that, in terms of insurance, I don't think people understand the level of care that goes under that, behind the scenes as well. Tony, you can explain that much better, 'cause I honestly don't know what the status of those, might be today. But, like, people don't understand the actual level of insurance that there is on the back end if something were to 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 go down, right? The protection, I guess. But what I will say is that while escrow has it difficult because they don't have like a one only thing that they can do for any just individual or company that does business through them, what you should try and do better, I think, is try and not do as many manual verification through email or calling or whatnot, because I think the product should provide that to the user to this day, and that would reduce the amount of KYC issues that we have, or related issues that we have to this day.
mhm.
Because the issue is not like Drew said, the issue is not that you're requesting something or you're requesting a specific document. It's that it's not friendly for the customer who's trying to get that, especially taking into consideration that you have people from many different states or many different countries where documentation is so different across all
Yeah.
jurisdictions or across the globe. And then I was, on the other hand, like, back when I was at escrow, trying to see, okay, so this is what we need. This is the information here. Some countries, for people to know, are still, providing handwritten documents, and that's something escrow needs to take into consideration as well. You
Yeah.
can't
No, look,
reject a
God bless.
handwritten document.
I truly, I'm grateful that escrow.com exists, and I cannot imagine the complexity of compliance in that industry. Uh, but it's not my industry, it's yours. And so I just,
Yeah.
look, I think the last point I'm going to make on this is simple. You guys doubled your price and then you decrease your service. And that is just, anybody that's done any business in any sector knows you can't do that. If you want an increased price, you better offer me more value, right? And or at a minimum, you better keep the same value and hope that we've got enough loyalty to be able to increase your price. But you can't double your price and decrease your service. That doesn't work. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. And I hope that you guys can uh, turn that around and fix some of what's broken, address some of these concerns that we've, aired here and some of the other ones that we've aired, offline. And, I think that you guys are a monumental business in our industry. And I have been proud to call you one of my most important partners for a very long time. And it truly has made me sad and extremely angry over the last 12 months that I have felt like I was being ignored and not being heard at all. And I just kept watching the service go down and mistakes being made in escrow.com that were very, very concerning to me. Fundamental things about the nature of your business that you were messing up, and that's inexcusable. And so, anyways, I literally am doing this not to embarrass anybody, not to put anybody on the hotspot, but I truly hope that this can be a wake-up call. Changes will be made, and the world can be happy again. That is truly what I hope for here. You guys are loved in our industry, or you were loved in our industry, less so today. I think that that can be fixed. And so I think that there's an opportunity, and there's only one escrow.com. So look, I think the ball is yours to take and run the court with. But you guys got to step it up. You got to step it up. You can't have unforced errors. Unforced errors will kill you. And that's exactly what's going to happen. You know, if you're allowing these types of things to happen to some of your best customers.
100%. And I think that really speaks testament to, and I won't go into any of the specific elements here out of confidentiality and stuff, but, I think that just speaks to, in general, the number of things that we've had to handle manually because of the fact that every state, every jurisdiction, every person, everything, shape or form has to
Yeah.
get a little bit different flavor of escrow, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, and I think this is even a conversation I had with Matt, is like, if we were to double or triple our volume tonight, what's going to happen? Right? What's going to happen?
You wouldn't be able to handle it. That's the thing. And I know that Matt's looking at big greener pastures and trying to get marketplaces join Escrow, but you certainly would not be able to handle it because I know exactly what your systems look like, and they're just too manual for
So
marketplaces to go.
So this is a great segue. And if you have something more to say, you want to say, but by all means. But otherwise, I was going to transition to something. Believe this on a positive note, which is that I saw a recent announcement that you guys are launching you're going to launch a new system. I forgot where I even saw this.
yeah. So
Tell us about that.
So we're launching Escrow 2.0, which we're moving all of our legacy tech stack, especially on the front end, over to the new freelancer tech stack. So
Mhm.
that means you guys are going to have a brand new, slicker interface with more information that's provided, more dashboards to show you what the heck is going on, right? And more information provided to both buyers and sellers on that front in that respect as well. That also unlocks new potential and opportunities for us to implement things like, for example, AI chat or, the additional auxiliary functionality to supplement the existing service delivery that we already have. Right.
Amazing.
And that's also a large part of this as well, is I need to kind of look through this and find some ways to additionally help automate some of these things. Because again,
Yes.
this is maybe a testament to Sofia and how good she was back at Escrow. But previously, you would not believe the amount of things that she had to manually handle for you specifically on your account to make sure that things were smooth. And, she's here now, so it makes sense. But,
Are you trying to imply that I'm high maintenance?
No, you were in high maintenance. There were other accounts that had more transactions, arguably lower in value, and literally my entire day was spent on just fixing things that
Yeah.
you guys didn't need to know because I was just trying to do that without raising any alarms, I guess, but
Yeah. So,
just to
so
make your life easier.
That's what I'm saying, is I think Sophia is amazing and she will always be amazing, but I cannot, I mean, maybe not me specifically, but I'll say for the business, like, we cannot expect to run a business off of the backs of people like Sophia, right? Like, we need
Yeah.
to find processes and ways to automate and ways
Yeah.
to, and so far,
I
I
think
think,
she would agree more than anybody.
No, seriously.
so
uh,
that's what I'll say to that is, I do think your pains and your concerns are heard across the organization. And I don't want you to feel like, nobody knows about this shit, because people do. It's not a simple fix, right? Because we're turning what is fundamentally, from a regulatory perspective, built to be a manual process into trying to build it into a scalable business, scalable global business, right? And ultimately, those are going to come in steps. Like, this is not something that I can say, in the next 3 months or in the next 2 actions that I'm going to take, that this is all going to go away, right? We need to find a way to not only scale up our processes and technology, but also our people at the same time.
yeah, so
So,
quick question around that. So what does that mean in terms of not just for us
yeah.
on the front end, but what does that mean on the back end, I guess?
Yeah. So some of the things that I'm looking to do, again, not speaking too much about the specifics about what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to, number
Cool.
one, make sure that the right people are touching the right things, right? And that we have the right amount of firewalls and controls and checks and processes that we have to make sure that individuals who are handling one thing do not have the adverse effect of being able to affect other things, right?
Mhm.
And a couple of other things is, again, firewalling the different functions of the organization such that, one function of the organization does not fundamentally, with different motives and incentives, be able to affect the outcomes of another part of the organization, right?
Mhm.
Lovely.
Those are going to be some things that I am looking at, and some of the initial low-hanging fruit items that I will be, tackling. And of course, automation and technology being what they are from the product side of things, I will be pushing for those as well. But that's in essence, long story short, what I'm planning or what I'm trying to do to kind of come to the table with some of those solutions. I don't have exact answers that I can share out in this podcast, but more to
Yep.
come.
But I think, if I'm not mistaken, the date I saw was like more or less now, like coming up in the next week or two or something. No?
Yeah. So you mean the Escrow 2.0 thing?
Yeah.
So that's coming sooner rather than later because that has been in the development pipelines for a long, long time.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's going to be something that's coming imminently.
Well, that's
And
exciting. I mean, look, I think I think it's a welcome development for everybody. I think everybody will be welcome, very happy to see Escrow 2.0 coming out of the dinosaur age, and you know,
yeah,
uh
Yeah,
so
I think that there is a lot that, obviously you, Tony, cannot discuss, and I won't mention because of all these reasons. But there is a lot that happens behind the scenes. That's actually the origin of a lot of issues, and if those were to get fixed, not as much as like our front view, but those need more imminent action. Because that's what the people servicing us ultimately need to action and see and work through, and I know how prehistoric some of those systems are and how you touch one thing and everything else breaks. And so if that gets fixed, I guess, that would already be a great addition and a great modification to the entire like experience, I guess.
maybe
yeah.
this is where I'll add to it just one last piece, kind of more of like a PSA for the whole industry. Like what I am focused on right now is to make sure that the allocation of the resources are also going to be in those areas. So what I mean by that is previously, historically speaking, the resources were always front loaded to the customer facing side. So you guys got to see the vast majority of our best resources directly engaging with you guys, right? But part of what I'm going to do is I also am looking to redirect some of those resources onto the backend processes as well. So some of the changes might not be visible. You might not feel like, oh, well, the person I'm working with suddenly got a lot better, or a lot more competent, or, every way, shape, or form amazing. All our
Yeah.
problems were solved. But, fundamentally, I think this is one of those things where the backend tooling needs to change. And we don't have a way of doing that until we, really put our resources in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look,
Yeah.
my prayers have been answered. Sounds like some resources have finally been put into that area. And I look forward to Escrow 2.0, and all positive things to come. Hopefully, this will be a year of growth and improvement
Yeah,
for all of us, and we can get back on track.
absolutely. Yeah, that's the goal. Thank you.
All right, sounds great. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I think this is a good place to shut it down. We definitely went over time, which is always good because it means we had a good
But I think it was a
spirited.
great. I think it was a great conversation on many fronts, and I think that we hit on a lot of really important topics that the industry, our viewers, will take to heart and also care about, and I think that's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, I mentioned it earlier. One of the things for us with escrow and some of the challenges that we had based on either deals they couldn't do or some of the issues that we were having, and some of it was like, okay, because we did a big Bitcoin deal, and we can't do that through I mean, we did a bunch of Bitcoin deals, but one particularly big deal that we couldn't do through escrow, right? So obviously that goes to a different. There were a few others from a verification standpoint. There were a few others from a and after a few of these other issues came to light, right? Which we naturally said, all right, look, we've got to diversify a little bit. I mean, we did, we were talking about, when we were going through our year end stuff, I mean, we did as much off escrow as we did on escrow this year, right? Or last year. So as an example. And for us, that's, I think it's fine to have other providers if there are benefits, but, we also like to have really strong partners. And we've always felt very confident,
We've
comfortable.
never felt compelled to use anybody else except on the crypto stuff. We've always had to, but
Yeah, unless there was like, hey, we absolutely can't do this deal. But it got to a point where it wasn't even worth on some of these deals trying to do them through you guys because it was like, all right, look, like the trust is
well,
eroding.
there's a little period of time where it was like I'm not doing anything. Like you guys are just like I don't remember. I'm not let's not go there. We've
Yeah, yeah. But
ended it.
that's my point is, and look, we're happy to air our like we obviously we publicize so much of what we do and how we do it and what we think and all these kinds of things. So it's good for us to put this out in the general public because it is very important for the service you provide for the industry. And it's not like we're the only ones that had some struggles, right? And obviously you guys are going to work through some things. There's always growing pains, like you said. You're changing manual. I mean, it happened when I ran
But
NameJet.
I am a proponent of transparency. I have nothing to hide. I don't
No, and
disclose
I
my
think I actually
sale
think
prices,
Drew, I
but
think for as
I
much as you
think
were,
that's not my data to disclose. So that's the reason I don't do it. But I think that this is productive for all parties involved. More transparency, more better for everybody.
well, and I think it's
And
great for the industry in general to see you, Tony, and how you
100%.
kind of talk and react and, working through some of these
And
things.
literally, like
It's
you have a gold
productive.
star in my book, Tony. Like straight up. I mean, everything I said. I think that you have a much more analytical and process mind around these things, and I think you will, make a difference. And that is what I want. I just
You know,
want
yeah, and we didn't
difference.
actually get into your background, Tony, but you're a science guy. I mean, you're not even like, right? I mean, what's your
Tony's a G.
but you're a microbiology guy, right? Isn't that your like yeah, so we're all about the science, man. We got to get into the science of domains. I love it. And no, it's funny. I think the kind
I saw Tony's eyes light up when we started talking about statistics. I saw it.
well, it's funny when because when we introed you, I wasn't even really thinking about this being your first time on the show. In my mind, you kind of, we've talked and met in person and, and we had August and we've had Matt and we've had, and Sophia's been on the show a bunch and, we sort of had the escrow team on. So I wasn't really even thinking, I didn't even give you that much of a, like,
Had
I didn't
multiple generations of the escrow team on.
Yeah.
so I didn't even give you your full bio, but you are, you've got a background in data science and and I think that analytical approach is going to be very helpful with what you guys need to do. I was alluding to this before when I ran NameJet, we had to do something similar where we had to turn a lot of manual processes and try to automate them into ways and make the system do things it wasn't initially intended to do, right? And it's all fine and good when you're like, oh, this would be a great feature. Oh, this would be great functionality to have. And it's like, well, a lot of times that's easier said than done. But I think most importantly, it's that you got to come from a top down place of like, sort of come from the right place of intent in order to try to achieve these things. It's two things. You have to have the right intent and you have to have the right resources, right? And if you guys aren't committed in that way, then you're not going to
So
get
that is literally the reason I decided to air my grievances today publicly, was simply that this is a top-down thing, and I wasn't getting through to the top. And I don't blame any of these things on any of the people that were involved in them. It's really a matter of being the right resources being allocated to the right people to do the right job. That's it.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
all falls on the leader. Falls on my head, falls on Matt's head, falls on the leader of the business in every case, every time. And so I hope that you are given the resources that I think you are competent to utilize for the benefit of the business and for the benefit of our industry and for the benefit of us as a client. That's it. That's all I have to say
domains
on
are
that.
cooked because domains are cooking, baby. So
Domains are
let's
cooking,
cook.
man.
You know what
Domains
I'm
are up and
saying?
to the
So
right,
let's
at least
cook.
those .com domains. And so, anyways, that's it.
But
That's all I
let's
got to say.
so
Tony,
and on that
thank you
note,
very much.
all right,
Yeah.
Drew being done talking is a perfect place for us to shut the show down. So Tony, thank you. Drew, thank you. Sophia, thank you so much for joining the show today. It is much appreciated. This was very, very productive. This was a great conversation. I hope the audience enjoys it. Speaking of the audience, for all of those of you who have stuck around through this marathon episode, the airing of grievances and so on. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you. We say it on every show. Without you, there is no us. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Feel free to reach out. Tony's info will be out there. He's accessible. We're obviously accessible for the good, the bad, the ugly. We're not hard to find. So please let us know, and we're all just going to keep working to do what we do and do it better and do it as best we can. And, just keep making things do what they do. So With all that said, thank you guys and thank you to the audience. We'll see everybody next time here on Domain Sherpa, where all roads lead to domains. Peace out, y'all. We'll see you soon.